we'll just do it on the fly. But yeah, you can lead the show, and remember, then we begin with general expectations and what we know about Conan to emphasize that first. Be interesting for the audience.
I already hit start, sorry. Welcome to Midnight's Edge After Dark. My name is Tom. With me is Andre, if you hadn't just heard him talking.
Yeah, there you go.
Sorry that's about that embarrassing moment there. Yeah.
Well, that's the beauty with live shows.
Isn't it, though? Isn't it? So, yeah, it's me and Andre today. Rob might pop in if he sees the message. Otherwise, we're going to talk a lot of Conan the Barbarian, that is. Of course, nobody's a bigger Conan fan around Midnight's Edge as Andre is. So, Andre, why don't you give us a little bit of oversight of what we're going to discuss today?
Certainly. As some of you may be aware, this week marked the first week that Conan has been back in Marvel's hands. Marvel had the Conan comic book license before from 1970 until the late 90s, and during that time, Conan was the official prehistory of the Marvel comic book universe. So 12,000 years before Spider-Man was spinning around in New York and the Avengers were fighting Ultron or whoever, then Conan was roaming the earth. And now, after a decade, or well, actually more than a decade with Dark Horse, then for reasons I'm not entirely sure of, Marvel somehow are back in control over Conan, and they got the Conan rights on the 1st of January, and they wasted absolutely no time and dropped Conan on the 2nd. And yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're just going to review the first issue of Marvel's new Conan, because that is something that is kind of a big deal to me, at least. I know some of you out there as well. So, Tom, before we begin, as I said in the intro, let's discuss where we all stand on Conan to begin with. Me, I'm obviously a huge fan, but how about you? How do you approach this?
Well, I've always been aware of and liked Conan. I have not seen the Schwarzenegger films since I was a young child, and I remember Red Sonja the most. As far as the character himself in the books or the classic comics, I'm not as familiar. I know kind of an overview of whatever, the main kind of story. So this is kind of my first real Conan comic and story I've ever really been exposed to since I can actually really remember and recall in my head, since I was so young the last time I had seen the Schwarzenegger films.
What were your impression of the Schwarzenegger films? So, or what's your recollection? So, what kind of honestly, how do you go into this?
Outside of just a few various things here and there, like the famous scenes most people remember, just because I've seen them in so many other places, outside of the film since I was younger. That's the only reason I probably remember them, because I remember very little to nothing. All I really remember about Red Sonja is Bridget Nielsen's in it and little Ernie Reyes Jr. kicking ass. That's all I remember. So it's like I have a very, very light recollection. I know more about, let's put it this way, I know more about the comparison to He-Man than I know more about Conan through that than I actually do through actual exposure.
Yeah, well, that's a cool starting point then, because then we have the review of the new comic from someone who is relatively new to all things Conan, and that's one of the things that this series has to do. It has to bring more people in that weren't familiar with Conan from before. As for me, my first exposure to Conan was actually like a comic book commercial from 1991, I think, shortly after the Conan magazine premiered in Norway. And then I just saw like a one-page commercial for it, and I decided, no, that seems way too scary for me. I was just like 10 or something at the time. And then I saw the movie a few years later, which I thought was all right, but it didn't impress me or anything like that. And then when I did my master's in England in 2006, then I went to the local comic book store, and there I happened to pick up some reprints of the original set of Marvel Conan the Barbarian, the Dark Horse reprints, because they happened to be there, and I figured, yeah, sure, why not? And I was blown away by them, and that's how I came to be a fan of Conan, and by extension of Robert E. Howard, because that's how I first discovered the Conan comics, and through there the original stories, and through there the Dark Horse comics. And Conan is probably my favorite character of all time. Like, yeah, I love He-Man, love Hulk, love the Punisher, but if I had to oh, and of course Judge Dredd. And if you ask me which is my favorite character, then the answer is going to depend a little bit from day to day, but most days it's probably going to be Conan. So yeah, I'm excited to see Conan return to Marvel. But of course, it's not like there was like a huge gap with no Conan, because Dark Horse have been publishing Conan non-stop since 2004. They only stopped like the last 7-8 months once it became clear to them that they weren't getting the license anymore for whatever reason. So yeah, but still, it's exciting to read. So let's get into the comic as a whole. Now, you've just read it. What did you think about it?
It wasn't bad. I actually liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, it wasn't much to it. It was a real kind of introduction to obviously what's probably going to be a much, bigger story, of course. The art wasn't bad. Wasn't hard to understand. I kind of got the whole idea of what was going on. I don't know the original story, so obviously I can't compare it to that. But if this is watered down in any way, considering I'm sure it is in a little bit, from what it used to be, I can't imagine how, much more intense the older stuff was, because this didn't seem like they were pulling any punches anyway. And I'm sure they were. So outside of that, though, like I said, it sets up Conan as, he was born on the battlefield. He is seen in this arena kicking ass, and this lady and him getting ready to go to town, and she turns into a witch, or she is a witch, obviously.
Well, did you notice that it's not that she's getting ready to go to town? She turns into a witch while they're in town.
Yes, that's true. Yes, thank you. They're in the midst of it. And she, of course, scratches his back, which poisons him. And she takes him, how do you pronounce it? Razazel?
I don't know. Just to be clear, this is not an adaptation of an original story.
Right.
This is a brand new story.
All brand new. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's how you say it then. So he's like supposed to be this devil-like demon who's controlling all the dark undead witches and whatnot. And he wants warriors' blood, or barbarians' blood, and gets a taste of it, but Conan gets out of there real quick, cutting off the witch's head in the process. But then years later, it fast forwards, and Conan meets two children on the battlefield collecting bodies, and soon he realizes, after the witch returns, that these children have been raised by the Razazel, whatever how you say it.
I would imagine it must be Razazel or something.
Razazel, yeah, it's something like that. It doesn't look like it's too hard to say in your head, but when you try to say it out loud, it's one of those words. So anyhow, so he gets stabbed in the back by the kids, and that's where this cuts off. So again, like, you're just kind of getting the start of a story. I'm not sure if I liked how they jumped so far ahead, as far as like, there's got to be some interesting stuff that happened in between there, but this seems to be telling a specific story, because it keeps reiterating it's about the story about how Conan died. And I think they bring it up at least 3 times.
Yeah, well, I think that seems a little bit premature, given that this is the first issue, so that might be getting ahead of themselves.
Right.
Yeah. Uh,
Well, your impression though, since you're actually
yeah,
coming from somebody who knows Conan. I mean, to me though, I got your typical kind of barbarian sword and sorcery, you know, kind of story out of it, I guess.
yeah. In my opinion, this is perfectly serviceable. It's not the best Conan comic out there, and it's not the worst. But I can see why they are doing what they're doing. Apart from the fact that this is the death of Conan, which I think is like again a little bit premature, given that you're just restarting it, unless there's some twist towards the end or something
I have a
there.
feeling that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I like about it is that this kind of like establishes everything for those who are new to the property, such as yourself. What we see here is that he is well. Let's just go through it step by step, because the first thing you have like this legendary speech, for lack of a better word, that you have in the movie and in all iterations of Conan. Know, O Prince, that between the years when the oceans drank Atlantis and the gleaming cities, and the years of the rise of the sons of Arius, there was an age undreamed of. Just to set the stage. So that is there. So that's pretty cool. That's something that you have to have in every iteration of Conan. And then after that, we're treated to like this collage from various covers and interior art from the original run of Conan. I recognize several of these. So that's pretty cool. Before we then begin with the birth of Conan on a battlefield, which is straight from the original stories. And this is also something that we saw in the Dark Horse comics and in the 2011 movie, how basically his mother cut him out of her womb with a
Right.
knife on the battlefield. So yeah, that's very true to Conan, and we also see him later in life as a king. And this image is very similar to what we saw in the Schwarzenegger movie. Like, you might not remember that, but like the gear he wears and the beard and everything is very similar to that appearance, which is obviously not a coincidence. And then we are juggling a little bit back and forth between eras. And again, this is also very true to the both the previous comics and the original stories, because they were told out of order. They were told as if Conan is an old seasoned warrior, and he relays the adventures of his life to you, the reader. But he does it in the order in which they appear to him, in his recollection, not necessarily the order in which they happened, which is why they go a little bit back and forth in time. You had that, for instance, in the Savage Sword of Conan, which is like the really legendary comic book series from Marvel, which was brutal and had nudity and gore and everything. There, in one issue, he could be king, and the next one, he could be a young thief, and
Yeah,
everything
I
in
didn't get the
between.
impression he was telling the story though.
Yeah, no, you do,
Yeah.
but basically, I'm just talking about the order. It's not that it's told like, oh,
No, but
remember
in
that
this
one
one, I
time.
mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But so that's standard. But then also, what I liked about it is that it doesn't hold back. It is every bit as brutal as the original stories and the Savage Sword. Because the first image we see of Conan, what's he doing? He's lopping off someone's head.
Right.
So no, this isn't watered down. And later he chops another guy in two. And what I really like about this, where I was won over, where I'm like, okay, this is not the best of Conan out there, but Jason Aaron, who writes this, he claims to be a fan of Conan, and I believe it, because he seems to get something really, really important. Because there is a part of the comic here where Conan seemingly is at the mercy of another warrior. And this other guy, he says, what sad and feeble gods do you worship where you come from? Because now would be a good time to pray. And Conan then goes on to say that he worships Crum, but he doesn't pray. No one of his people prays to Crom, because Crom is not a god that you pray to. And that is perfect. That
Well,
just
that's not how he
goes
said
to
it,
show.
but
No, that's not the exact wording.
he said because Crom wouldn't give a damn. I like that, because there's a lot of moments this could have went real cheesy and corny. That's why I had to interrupt you there. But that was one of my favorite moments in the book, because it was like it was just right, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. No, that actually is, well, it's not entirely accurate to the original stories. Basically, what they say in the original stories is that no, Cimmerians, or however you pronounce it. In my mind, it's always been Cimmerians, but apparently it's Cimmerians, which is something I have to get
That's the
used
way
to.
I've always heard it. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, in the original stories, you do not pray to Crom. This is true. For the followers of Crom, he does one thing for them, and one only, and that is he instills their bravery and courage in them at birth. That's it. Everything else they do with their lives is entirely up to them. If they bother Crom by praying to him, he's not only going to ignore them, he may even send them doom for being such praying, crying wusses. So, yeah, the followers of Crom, they don't pray, because no good will come from it. And Crom is also a god that has no commandments. When you die, you're going to the same misty underworld no matter what you do in life. So you might as well live life to the fullest, because this is the only life you get, and then you're done. So yeah,
Right.
Crom is a good god, very good god for those who wants to live life to the fullest.
Right. And what I meant was basically just, the tone of the moment. I have no comparison to make here, because, again, as I said in the beginning, I really am not that familiar with the character outside of the comparisons with He-Man, really.
Yeah. So yeah, I was quite happy with that. They seem to be getting this right. They haven't toned anything down. And also, one thing that many people were worried about and actually took for granted was that how watered down is this going to be? How PC, for lack of a better word, is this going to be? And I'm happy to report that so far, not one bit.
Not
Because
really,
again,
no.
as we said, we have Conan lopping off people's heads and killing them in other brutal, blood-dripping ways. He obviously likes his women, and we see him with multiple women in this issue, and he even beds a witch, which is what sets the story going. So yeah, then we shall see what happens next. But so far, I think that this issue did kind of what it needed to do. It set the stage for a bigger story to follow. It worked as an introduction of the most basic things for those new to the character, such as yourself. And yeah, it also dispelled the common fear that this is watered down, which it obviously isn't.
Right. And somebody asked earlier, Eric Draven asked, did Marvel get just the comics rights or the movie rights too?
Only the comic book rights that we are aware.
Okay. Yeah. So there was a couple questions. A lot of them you've already kind of addressed, which were like the watered down questions and stuff like that. And we'll get to some more questions here in a bit.
Yeah, let's just look at them first, so before some are lost. In case
let's see what we got here.
Yeah.
Let me go back up here. Let's see here. Willie Woodward wanted to ask, if I did a fake movie poster of Emmy, would you do what? Who would you think would play Andre? I was thinking Dr. Doom, but I wasn't sure if it would be funny enough.
You know who I would have play me if someone were to play me in a movie? When I was in England, because remember I told you I discovered Conan when I was in England, and when I was there, It took me a while to figure this out, but like people would point at me in the street and they would say, "I'm a lady," and then they would laugh. I had no idea what the hell. Did I wear something wrong with my clothes or something like that? And then at one point, one person asked me if they could have my autograph until they opened my mouth. Then I figured, okay, no, it's not you. And then I figured I obviously must look like someone. And then when I started university there, then I found out that apparently I was a dead ringer for a comedian in the UK. What's his name again? One of the guys in Little Britain, David Williams. I don't sound like him, but I look like him.
I'm not aware of him. I'd have to look him up.
Yeah, I didn't see the similarity at all, but just for fun, for a few weeks, I exchanged my picture on MySpace or whatever it was we used back in those days. And the only one who noticed was my best friend in Norway. He asked me to change that thing because it wasn't me. No one else noticed that it wasn't me in the picture. So yeah, that was pretty cool. So I'd have to say, David Williams to play me.
All right. This wasn't really a question, but I thought you might want to address this because, like I said, most of the questions were about the SJW thing. Eric Kelly said, "Oh God, if they do a Boruto thing, I may get upset. Conan's son, son of Conan, as the new main character." Do you have anything to say about that?
Not really.
Okay.
What was the question again?
Well, there wasn't really a question. I didn't know if you had an opinion on Donan.
What the hell is a Donan?
Donan, son of Conan.
Okay, that must be some parody I'm not familiar
He's like,
with.
"Oh God, if they do a Boruto thing." So a Boruto thing must mean if they have a son take on. I think what he's asking is, or saying is, he'll be upset as if they have Conan die early on, but he has a son who takes on the mantle. And Donan is just a fake name he made up.
Okay, well, the name of Conan's son in canon is Con, C-O-N-N. That's actually something that was in the original Marvel comics that they got from the Lancer.
He probably had a lot of kids, but
yeah, he did. He had loads of kids, but only one legitimate heir. According to original Conan writer Robert E. Howard, he had a goodly number of bastards running around, but only one heir in Marvel canon.
All right, and Tyler, our resident writer, wants to ask you. He has a question about Norway. Last one, he swears. "I read about a Netflix movie called July 22nd, directed by Paul Greengrass.
Yes.
And heard there is a Norwegian version. Any thoughts on the films?"
There's only one version of it, and that's the one that's on Netflix. It's a Paul Greengrass directed movie starring Norwegian actors talking in English, but there is no Norwegian language version of it. That there isn't. What you have is you have a completely different movie, which is Norwegian language as well, but that's a different movie. That's not the Paul Greengrass one. Of the two, I honestly prefer the Paul Greengrass one because that's not a piece of propaganda, whereas the Norwegian one kind of is. The Norwegian movie is. It lasts. It's good in its own right, but it's like a political purpose behind it. It lasts for 1 hour 20 minutes, however long the attack lasted, and you only see it from the point of view of one person on the island, and it's filmed like as in one take the whole movie, which lasts for as long as the attack. So it's worth watching, but honestly, the Paul Greengrass movie is the better movie.
All right.
And also, he can ask me anything about Norway anytime. It's no problem at all. There's no upper limit.
There you go. Let's see here. Did you want to say anything else about?
Yeah, I see one question from Mills. Thought you would do an editorial on this topic on the main channel. What is coming to the main channel, Mills, is a retrospective on basically the history of Conan leading up to the Schwarzenegger movie, and then especially the Schwarzenegger movie, solving the riddle of steel and stuff like that, and a little bit of the aftermath. What I won't do there is give a review of the first issue of the new series. That's what this is for. But the proper retrospective, that is coming along nicely, and it shouldn't be. How long do you think, Tom? Because I think it's going to be, I don't know, half an hour, 40 minutes maybe?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get most of it done this weekend. That's my goal anyway. So then it just
You've
depends on,
only gotten the first quarter of the
yeah.
script, to be clear. So.
We also have the Rambo one, so those two are
Yeah.
going to be kind of like my two things I work on this weekend. So
Yeah.
but anyway, yeah.
Well, actually, you're going to be working on 3 things. You just don't know it yet.
Oh, I don't. Okay, well, there you go. So there's your answer on that. So probably sometime next week, I'd imagine.
Yeah, as soon as possible. And so yeah, that's going to be a Conan retrospective, and I hope it's going to be the definitive one. At least is my intention.
All right. Did you want to talk a little bit more about Conan before we move on to the next topic, or?
I haven't got anything more to say about it other than it did what it needed to do. So unless someone in the crowds watching have any particular questions about it, then we can move on.
Yeah, we can always come back to questions in a little bit as well, as long as you got some time left. They want Adam Wolford just got a question in here. Who owns the rights to the Conan movies? Wasn't it?
No one. The ones who owns them are the company of Fredrik Malmberg, who is the ultimate owner of Conan. I do not know if a company has the movie license right now. I don't think so. Universal used to have them, but they gave them up, and this is why the King Conan movie with Schwarzenegger is dead in the water, because they were developing it and they stopped to the point where they gave up the rights. So if Marvel do want the movie rights, they are free to go and collect them. Amazon had the TV rights, but they chose not to do anything with them. So on paper, both the TV and movie rights for Conan are up for grabs.
Yeah, best I can find is Cabinet Entertainment.
Yeah, that may be the one. Sounds like something that Frederick, because it's like changed name a few times, so rather it's been restructured and stuff. But basically, it's a holding company for Fredrik Malmberg, where the Conan and Robert E. Howard rights are stored.
Mm-hmm. That's what it looks like. Yeah. So at this moment in time, it looks like that is the case. So who knows? Maybe if this comic is successful, never know.
That's kind of what I'm hoping, that this might bring some renewed interest after the previous movie shut down the interest that was before. That's why it's so important that this here comic not only sells, but sells well. And I think it should be in many people's interest to see it be successful, even if you're not necessarily a fan of Conan, for the very, very simple reason that this right here is a countermeasure to all of the other stuff that Marvel have been doing. Many are complaining about the political correctness, for lack of a better word, in Marvel comics the past 5 years or so. This comic is the polar opposite to that. At least it is so far. If this is a hit, it's going to send a signal, not just to Marvel, but to the entire industry, that there is room for something that isn't overly politicized as well, something that is just entertainment and that shows more traditional values, toxic masculinity and all. For that reason, I think that everyone who isn't necessarily a huge fan of how Marvel Comics have been run the last few years should hope and root for the success of this comics, whether you intend to read it yourself or not, just for the sake of the bigger picture.
All right, we actually have a couple more Conan questions that just came in. Adam Wolford also asks, have we ever seen the Conan cartoon series or live action series? No, I haven't. Andre?
I have, yes. I haven't seen either to the full extent. Honestly, I couldn't be asked. But I have seen a little bit of each. I've suffered through the pilot of Conan the Adventurer, the live action series. Couldn't stand it. Destroyed the Tower of the Elephant, which was a crime, and Ralph Möller is a horrible, smiling, cheerful, freed slave Conan. And the cartoon series, also called The Adventurer, Conan the Adventurer, I saw like 3/4 of an episode a decade ago, and it couldn't hold my interest because it was like a Saturday morning cartoon from the early 90s, written as an early 90s, late 80s like thing, without any of the cool stuff that made it lasting. So yeah, no, I haven't seen them to their full extent. I know that the animation is slightly less far away from the original series and the comics than the live action series is, but I don't know much more than that.
All right. And Eric Kelly lets us know that the cartoon is on YouTube. So, all right, we want to check that out.
Yeah,
River
it's easily enough available if one wants to find it.
Yeah. River 727 has an interesting question. I'm interested in Conan, but where do I start?
Just trying to think of the best place
Entry
to begin.
point. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I would recommend as the best entry point possible? Of course, this is an entry point right here, but it's going to take a few weeks and months before you get a complete story. What I would recommend that you begin with to get into Conan, or at least see what it's about, as I mentioned in the beginning, Dark Horse used to have the Conan book license. They had it from like 2003, 2004, up until the 31st of December 2018. And in that period, they released some decent Conan, some okay Conan, some bad Conan, and some truly great Conan. And all of it has been collected in omnibus collections. And the best stories they put out are the first ones. So I would recommend that you go and check out the first of the Dark Horse omnibus collections. Dark Horse are no longer allowed to sell them, but it shouldn't be difficult to find, either in stores or online. So, yeah. Kushjet said there's a new Conan omnibus coming out on January 29th. No, not that one. That's an omnibus of the original stories from the 70s. And those are all excellent. They're what got me into Conan. But as a entry point for someone else, I wouldn't recommend beginning there. That's like something cool when you're already a little bit into it. To get into it, I'd actually recommend going with the Dark Horse 2004 series.
All right. Lokta wants to know: do you think if there will ever be a new R-rated Conan movie or TV series?
I hope so. There almost was. And I hope that this series here is going to be successful enough that it will show that there is a market for it. Because if there is, there is a heavy R-rated Conan series that's written and ready to go. They just need someone to pick it up.
All right. One more Conan question just come in here. Have you guys ever heard that John McTiernan was asked in an interview if he would like to make a Conan movie with Arnold, and he said yes. He was asked about another Predator or Die Hard, but said no. Is that King Conan movie that was talked about a few years back?
John McTiernan, he's never been in talks for any Conan movie. So here I guess that they were just talking about Conan in general. Would he like to direct the Conan movie? If he was asked in the last few years, then it would necessarily have been a King Conan movie. And he said yes, and yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm not surprised because Robert E. Howard, he wrote one full-length Conan novel in his life, and it's fantastic, and it's King Conan. And if Arnold Schwarzenegger were to star in a literal adaptation of that today, it would have been amazing. It would have been one of the best movies he could ever do.
All right. Patrick Onlinger has a question that's not related to Conan. He wants to know what your favorite teen movie is.
There's I'm gonna have to give two answers. One of them is I forgot the name of it. I have to look it up. Give me a second. It's with Amy Smart and the guy who played Garfield. It's from like the early 2000s or something. Oh, not Overnight Delivery, but something like that. Basically like a guy who films a sex tape with someone else or something, and he mails it to his girlfriend thinking...
Oh, are you thinking of Sex Drive?
No, not Sex Drive.
Oh, I know the movie you're talking about too, and I can't think of the name of it either.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. It's with Amy Smart. Road Trip.
Road Trip. That's it. Yes, I knew it was something like that. I remember the name.
Yeah. Of teen movies that you have seen, that's my favorite. Note that I stress of you have seen, because there's a Norwegian one that is my absolute favorite. But I don't know how you would see
the Norwegian one?
It's a Norwegian one, yes.
And what's that one?
It's called Tina and Bettina the Movie.
All right. Well, if you're able to get your hands on it, there you go. And Road Trip, I don't know if that's available on Blu-ray or not. I have the very old DVD. I know that. I'd have to look and see if that's been out on Blu-ray yet.
Yeah. Tom, I'm just gonna send you the link to my favorite Norwegian one, so you can put it up or something if possible. Which is my favorite teen movie. It's because that one is really, really clever. It's actually by a couple of comedians who are in their 30s and who basically are dressed as teenage girls. Of course, in the series, in the movie, they're meant to be teenage girls, but it's so clever. Love it. Yeah, and I think I saw another cool question here about audiobooks. Someone said something about that.
Yeah, that was going to be...
Oh, yeah, Adam Wofford. Is any of the books on Audible? Yes, all of them. Right. That's the beauty, because Del Rey released all the original Conan stories in book form in the mid-2000s. And they also made audiobook versions of them, which I happen to have, not just of Conan, so all the Conan stories you will find, but also the Cull stories and Solomon Kane and several others. So all of the Conan stories are collected in 3 volumes. Of course, one should check out the original Conan stories, but just to get into it, I would recommend the first omnibus of the Dark Horse Conan stories, just to get into it. And yeah, Christian Garcia, you were completely right. Road Trip was the movie we were looking for.
Yes, yep. And there was another question here I just got the answer to. Adam Wolford again wanted to know who owned the rights to Crawl the Conqueror. Cabinet Entertainment, the same company that owned the rights to Conan.
Actually, same company. Yeah, no, it's not ironic at all, because they own the entire Robert E. Howard.
Oh, I didn't know that was part of his. See, I did not know that was one of his. I've seen the movie, but I had no. I guess I never paid attention.
Yeah,
that's my bad.
That was supposed to be Conan 3, by the way.
Really? Okay.
Yes, it
All
started
right.
out as Conan 3, and then Schwarzenegger didn't want to star in it, and Milius didn't want to direct it, and then it got retrofitted into Cull instead. But that
Gotcha.
movie was the basis of Conan 3, or started out as Conan 3.
All right. So it's not so ironic, but thank you for the good question. Speaking of part threes, we're getting a part 3 of X-Men redo, and you wanted to talk a little bit about it. So let's move into that real quick while you got some time here left. Dark Phoenix. There's been some news about how bad it may be. Uh, you and I have talked about on the podcast if it'll even see the light of day. I also noticed that I see in the poster, which I have up here on the screen at the theater, and noticed nowhere on the poster does it say X-Men. Yeah, there's a big X behind her, and there's an X in behind Dark Phoenix, which looks really weird, but because of the way they wrote it. But um, yeah, nothing really to indicate that it's X-Men though. And I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to touch on the subject, especially with the Disney Fox thing.
Yeah, well, there's really not so much to say about it. You've covered it yesterday as well. The most recent rumor, of course, is that it may be Fant4-stick bad, and that really shouldn't surprise anyone. It may not be, it may turn out all right, because they said the same thing about Venom, as was pointed out in the source article, and that turned out not great, but certainly entertaining enough. However, you know what really works against Dark Phoenix?
Oops, sorry, I had to unmute. What's that?
What, in my opinion, works against it is that it's Simon Kinberg that has both written and directed it. Now, Simon Kinberg, he wrote X-Men: The Last Stand, and he says
Right.
that he wants to make up for that movie, which is fair enough. That's a movie that he wrote under the guidance of Tom Rothman, which I'm sure did not help one bit. But he has actually done some directing before. Back in the Fant4-stick days, he was the one who did rewrites on it, so he was partially guilty for that script as well. And when Josh Trank was too drunk or too high or whatever to direct anything, then reportedly it was him that had to step up to the plate to do the directing instead, and reportedly it was him that directed the reshoots of that movie. Now, we saw how that turned out. Granted, that movie was, it was never going to be good to begin with. But still, his only experience writing and directing movies have been one disaster after the other. In fact, the only movies that he have written that were any good were the ones that just so happened to be directed and overseen by Bryan Singer. And even that didn't help so much in the case of Apocalypse.
Right. Because Apocalypse is just, I don't know. I mean, it wasn't as bad. I didn't think it was as bad as everybody thought it was, but I could see why everybody felt the way they did. Because I don't have the attachment to the comics and stuff like most people do.
Yeah, I liked one thing about Apocalypse, and that was the one scene where they played Sweet Dreams in the background with Quicksilver and stuff. That's the one good thing about Apocalypse. Everything else about it sucked, especially Apocalypse himself.
Yeah, he was probably the worst part in my eyes too, but I didn't know the original story well enough to compare it.
Neither did I, but I didn't have to. I could see the movie for what it was.
Point taken. I guess maybe by the time I saw it, I just didn't think. I'm like, okay, it was bad, but I didn't think it was as bad as what everybody's saying it is. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But at that point, I'd lost all hope, kind of. I mean, It was like I was looking forward to Logan, and the best was behind us. I already knew that. So
yeah. The one thing that I really took away from X-Men Apocalypse was, sometimes it really is better with an all CGI character than an actor in makeup, even if that actor reportedly is talented. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the guy playing Apocalypse. I've forgotten his name. He also plays Poe Dameron, which
Oscar
I also
Isaac.
don't. Yeah, that's the one. He's not one of my favorites, let's say. But anyway, it was just ridiculous. I didn't buy that as Apocalypse at all. That needed to be a CGI character.
Well,
Exactly. As Eric Kelly says, Apocalypse should have been as good as Thanos. Yes, that's exactly what he should have been.
Right. Well, and not only that, when I think of Jason Isaacs, I don't think of this imposing, scary kind of character actor. Normally, he's not that. I don't know. It just didn't. I don't know why they picked him. I question that too. I just didn't get that. Is there something he's been in before that I haven't seen out there, guys, that justified him being in this? Because really, outside of the Star Wars movies, I haven't really seen him in anything. So I don't know.
Good agent.
Basically, and he was in a Star Wars movie, I guess.
Yeah, that's one of those things that an agent will sort out, because there you have like an agent decides that this guy he's a star and he's able to convince other people that he's working with, and typically you have like a director who's repped by the same agency, and then they work with each other, and then they find give each other roles. Like, for instance, that was how you had the guy who starred, what's his name again? The guy who was in Friday Night Lights, and then he was in 3 movies in 1 year. He was in Battleship, and he was in John Carter. And he was in another thing.
He played Gambit, right?
Yeah, that's the one.
I'm trying to think of his damn name now.
Yeah. Anyway, he was.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
to be a huge star, and he was done in 3 massive movies, and they all bombed. And that was the end of that.
Somebody will give us it in a second here in the chat, just as we remember it. But yeah, well, not only that, there's other examples. But some people, yeah, somebody said something. I can't find the thing right off the bat here. Where is it?
Yeah,
they were sticking up for Oscar Isaac, basically saying it wasn't his fault. That it was shit. It was basically,
No, that's true. It wasn't his
fault. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you could have any actor in that suit, right, and it's ridiculous.
Right. /111 asks a good question. Do you think that the cast of Dark X have options on bonuses regarding the box office revenues? Because regardless of Fox deal, that should be a good reason for them to campaign for the release of the movie in theaters and not on digital platform, like Andre seems to think.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they have, or at least some of them have, some kind of back-end deal.
The big ones probably do,
yeah, they probably do. So of course they have every incentive to see it, to see the movie go in big theaters. But also this is their career, and they want to see themselves up on the big screen as much as possible. And now they experience that they are in a movie that's being deliberately sidelined, that there's very little excitement for, and that the studio really isn't trying to drum up all that much support for. Quite the contrary, probably the ones that can make the decisions in Fox are trying to appease Marvel rather than pushing the movie to the best of their ability, which means that the movie is only further sidelined. And so they of course have every incentive to try to push the movie as much as possible. Not that that's going to help.
Now, over there in Norway, is it being called X-Men Dark Phoenix?
You know what? I haven't checked. I haven't seen any kind of marketing material for it, because here marketing doesn't begin until you can read about the movie a few months before it comes out, but they generally don't begin promotion until a few weeks before the release. So for instance, when you get like trailers for movies months and months in advance there, we have to see them in theaters. Like there's no Avengers and Endgame trailer in cinemas here. We get them 3 weeks before it comes in the theater. That's when we get the trailers.
Right. Okay. I was just curious because I think it was in the Japanese trailer, I think dropped the other day, and it is called X-Men Dark Phoenix there. But anyhow,
you know what I think is the cause for that? I think that removing X-Men from the title is a relatively recent thing. Mm-hmm. And that these international trailers were made before that decision was made to remove it from the trailers. The next batch of trailers, if indeed there is one, will probably have X-Men removed internationally as well.
I will have to keep an eye on that. Let's see here.
I just saw that Eric Kelly asked a question earlier. Andre, thoughts on Conan the Librarian?
Yeah, from UHF. I was going to ask you that
Yes.
too, and I missed that when I forgot
Yeah.
about it. Sorry.
I love it. I love
Conan
that
the
movie.
Librarian.
Yeah, I love Weird Al Yankovic, and I love the movie UHF. I love all of the parodies in it. And Conan the Librarian. Haven't you heard of the Dewey Decimal System? It's one of my favorites in it.
UHF celebrates its 30th anniversary this year.
Oh, fuck, I'm old.
I know, right? 1989, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was 89, or was it 88? I'm pretty sure it was 89 because it was.
Well, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure because it went up against like Indiana Jones and Ghostbusters and all that shit. So I think so.
I didn't discover it until the I don't know, late 90s. That's when I discovered it. I wasn't aware of its existence until it was on.
Well, probably wasn't
TV
even
one
released
day.
over there until like a couple of years after it came out. Even at that point,
It probably was released straight to VHS, but I had no reason to check it out.
It depends on how big Weird Al is in Norway, I suppose.
At the time, he was only in we got like the CDs, we got like the music parodies, but he wasn't known beyond that. But of course,
if he didn't do a lot of
music
concerts and
parodies.
stuff over there, then I'm assuming he wasn't that big.
You know what? He never came to a concert. He had like a concert here, like I don't know, 2-3 years ago or something.
Timely.
I had tickets for it, and something came up, and I couldn't go, and I'm still tormented over that because I'm an avid concert goer, and I missed that one, and I'm still sore about that.
Well, don't feel too bad because I also missed the one time I was going to go see him, but that he had to cancel the show and I couldn't go when he rescheduled it. So it was like, because that was when his parents passed away.
Of course, it was horrible. But that's one thing, because then like the concert is canceled. There was nothing that you could do about it.
Right.
Something comes up so that the concert goes ahead, but without you. That to me
that's
is
a bummer.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
Yeah.
Also, Patrick Ollinger asks, Andre, what did you think of the Jason Momoa Conan movie? A disappointment that really, really fucking hurt, because I was so invested in it from day one. And I read the scripts, I followed its development, and it was so obvious from so very early on that it was going to be a train wreck. Anyone could see that this movie was going to be a disaster. And everyone who saw it, all the Howard fans, all the Howard scholars, they could only look in horror and see the slow motion train crash years in advance, months in advance, weeks in advance, premiere hits, and it bombs just as expected. That it was one of the most painful movie experiences in my life, because it was a character that means that much for me, and the movie was that bad. Not Jason Momoa. Jason Momoa, he was fairly passable. He isn't my first choice for Conan, but he wasn't a bad Conan. It was the entire movie surrounding him that was a disaster, and that movie, it destroyed so much. It destroyed so much momentum and potential. And yeah, don't get me started.
All right. Well, how much time you got left? Because there's quite a few. There's a couple questions here that we can.
Half an hour maybe.
All right. Oh, okay.
Yeah, maximum 20 minutes. 20 minutes, half an hour.
/11111 had one here about Dark Phoenix. Is there any antecedent in Hollywood history where a studio is so ashamed of a blockbuster ready to go to release of a similar magnitude of Dark Phoenix where they don't release it in the end? Oh, several times.
Yes, many. There are many times where a movie has been held back, or delayed for a really,
Or
really
canned
long
altogether.
time, reworked. Yeah, there are many examples of it. Can you think of any specific ones?
Well, one we always bring up, Rob is a big fan of, and that's, or he wants to see really bad, and we talk about a lot, is The Day the Clown Died. Or cried. I mean, sorry, The Day the Clown Cried with Jerry Lewis. It's one of the most famous unseen, unreleased movies in history because of how bad it was supposed to be, I guess. There's so many others, but I mean, just in recent years, well, like Jason X sat on the shelf for like 2.5 years or better. It leaked online before it got in theaters. It was like online like a year before it was in theaters. Gosh, this happens all the time. We just recently had Battle Star or Battle Angel Elite or whatever it's called, just got delayed by how many months due to some reshoots.
Yeah, but it's not like they pulled the entire release
No,
though.
no,
That just
well,
got delayed.
yeah. Boy, let me think of some other ones that have been put. Well, gosh, I'm trying to think. See, that's the thing. Most of them eventually get released. That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the thing. Is that
5, 6, 7, 8 years sometimes.
Yeah, very few movies get pulled, period. But what will happen is that, for instance, they will cease to be theatrical movies and go straight to DVD or be dumped and be kind of buried. It doesn't often happen with the huge blockbuster movies, but on like medium or low budget movies, it happens. Has
Christian
happened.
Garcia just brought it up in the chat. The Fantastic Four, of course, one of the most famous ones besides.
For instance, but that's a slightly different example because that one was never intended to be released. Well, of course, it should be said though. They say now that it was never intended to be released, but you can rest assured that if it had been any good, if they had had any faith in it, they would have released it and collected a quick buck.
There was the Paul Schrader version of the fourth Exorcist movie, but that
there you go. Thank you. Perfect example. No,
another one was Smokey is the Bandit. Smokey and the Bandit 3, they completely reshot.
Yeah,
and I'll get to that one after you talk about the Exorcist.
Yeah, that's what they did with the Exorcist, because there's an example of just that. Because first they made an Exorcist prequel, and they decided that this is not the kind of movie that we want to release. It was Paul Schrader that was tasked with directing the Exorcist prequel, which then explored the first time. That Father Merrin met the demon Pazuzu, and Paul Schrader made a slow and boring, not all that scary movie. And the studio decided, Jesus, we can't release this. So officially, they said that they were going to hire in another director to do some reshoots to make it a little bit more scary. And that director was the Finnish guy. What's his name?
Rennie Harlin.
That's one, Rennie Harlin. And he didn't direct a few new scenes. He directed a whole new version.
One shot. One shot was all that was used.
Yeah. New cast, new story, new everything. The only one that remained was Stellan Skarsgård, who played the young version of Father Merrin, although he ironically was 10 years older than Max von Sydow was when he filmed the original Exorcist. But some people, they just become old at a young age. So,
well, plus he has makeup on in the Exorcist.
Plus he had some makeup. But the funny thing is that he then looked like he did in the Exorcist for the next 40 years.
Right? So, they did a good job in that, making him look old. Because when you see him in part 2 and he's all young and like he normally looks, you're like, oh, yeah, he is that young. I forgot. When he did
then in the 90s and 2000s, then he looked like he did in The Exorcist.
Exactly. So like I said, they did a good job of that. They made him actually look like he ended up looking. But no, and also ironically, when we interviewed Tom McLaughlin, I know it's been out there, but he told, and I didn't know at the time he said it, he was the one who wrote that version of Paul Schrader's. He was going to direct it, and then he backed out because he just didn't think he could do it. It wasn't something he wanted to take on. So basically his script
Good choice.
Used.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, Exactly. And then the funny story, though, is because then Rennie Harlin's remake of the unreleased movie came out and it bombed. And there was a huge demand for Paul Schrader's version. And then they released that direct to DVD.
And I actually like Paul Schrader's version a little bit better, but I kind of see what happened. You
Yeah,
know what I mean? It's like,
you can't blame the studio for doing what they did because they were in a position where they were kind of like damned if you do and damned if you don't.
yeah,
Because, yeah, none of the movies really worked for what they were supposed to be. I saw another cool question here from Kush.
there's been a lot
Who
of.
would be a good successor to Arnold, obviously as Conan? I'm thinking Dave Bautista has the build and the acting chops.
Not a bad choice.
Tom, would you like to go first on that?
Well, Dave Bautista's probably a good choice. He's done enough now that he could probably handle it. Momoa wasn't a bad choice. I haven't seen the movie, but I've just heard it's so horrible that I'm sure it's not his fault.
No, it's not his fault. It's not his fault. He would be a better Conan today than he was in 2011. That should be said, though.
Now, if The Rock was maybe 10, 15 years younger, maybe, perhaps, but he's a little too, he's a little too well known. Arnold was well known when he did it, but he wasn't huge yet. Otherwise, you'd almost have to find an unknown, and it's difficult to find that combo of a guy who's built plus can have the acting chops.
Yeah.
Usually good actors build themselves up. That's the way it goes. Kind of.
As for me, I would not go with Dave Bautista, and I wouldn't go with The Rock either. I don't think any of them are good fits for Conan.
Yeah, I don't know.
I would, but again, that's because I've read all the original stories, and I have an image of Conan that is very much like he is described in the comics. As such, who, if I could choose someone right now in this moment to star as Conan, who would I go with?
Henry Cavill? I don't know.
Yes, Henry Cavill.
He was another one I was just thinking he wouldn't be a bad choice.
Yeah, Henry Cavill. Or if not Henry Cavill, then someone with his basic features. Someone with his height, someone with his basic build, certainly no smaller than that. Someone with his facial structure, strong cheekbones, but still a relatively oval face, blue eyes, and black hair. Someone who is ethnically the black Irish type, because that's the ethnicity that Conan was in the original story. He was a proto-Celt, meaning that he was basically the same ethnicity as Henry Cavill, as Sean Connery, as Gerard Butler. That's the kind of person that you'd want to play Conan.
Yeah, as soon as you ask,
at least that's the person that I would want to play Conan.
Because even more people know that listen to the show that I'm not a big fan of Man of Steel in the least. I don't blame it, or Batman v Superman, or Justice League for that matter. I don't blame any of that on Henry Cavill. He was a perfect choice to play Superman. He was just given shit to work with.
Yeah, I agree. He was really good as Superman, and if he's not in Superman anymore, I'd much rather have him as Conan than The Witcher.
Yeah, that's true. Patrick Ollinger has a different kind of question. Andre, do you think A Nightmare on Elm Street will happen with Robert Englund? That's a quick one.
I hope so. I'd love to see him reprise the role one more time. Do I think it will happen? I don't know. I don't know what the right situation is. But I hope it will happen. I'd be very happy to see Robert Englund return one more time. If he doesn't, then I say, let it rest. Every story must come to an end at one point or the other.
Yeah, at this point, I'd rather just see Robert or nothing.
Yeah,
I agree.
So I'm there, Robert or nothing. I'd love another Nightmare on Elm Street, but that means Robert must return. We already had the remake. It was absolutely no good. Even if they had a really good actor playing Freddy, I didn't agree with the take on it. All in all, so yeah, no, you need Robert or nothing.
All right. Demon Reflection wants to know if we've heard a rumor of a Psycho reboot. Thoughts? I haven't heard a rumor, but they did pretty well with Bates Motel. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard really good things about it. So, I mean, maybe it's too soon after that. What do you think, Andre? Are you a Psycho fan?
Uh, Not a huge one. I've seen all of the movies, and I like the movies fine. Again, I think that is something that can be left where it was. The guy who played Norman Bates, I forgot his name right now. In the second he did
Freddie Highmore, I think it is.
what? Oh, you're talking about in the series.
Oh yeah, are you talking about? Oh, and Vince
I'm talking
Vaughn.
about the yeah. No, no, obviously not Vince Vaughn. My God, he was dreadful. He was in the
Which one are you
remake.
talking about then?
The original guy who played
Oh,
Norman
Anthony
Bates.
Perkins. I thought you said.
Perkins, yes,
I thought
thank
you
you.
said I thought you said in the series. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, no, no. The original movies is what I meant. Yeah, no, I think that Perkins was so good. We already have the TV series. Again, let it rest. I don't think that there's any reason at all to dig up Anthony Bates for any more adventures. I see
Yeah,
absolutely like his story has been covered so adequately at every stage in his life. Just let it rest.
yeah. Like I just said, I think with that recent series being the hit that it was, then it just finishing up. Yeah, just
Yeah,
let it alone for a while.
like finish that series. Then let
I
that
think
guy
it's done.
continue
But
to be
yeah,
or like bring it back. Then instead of like doing another thing, bring it back and continue that with the feature films if need be, and continue along that track. I'd
like
rather have them
all
do
the
that
story in the first
than
movie
do something
already.
brand new.
I haven't seen it, but I think they covered all the story from the first movie. I'm not 100%.
Yeah, I haven't seen them, so I wouldn't mend. Kush, Andre, thanks for Dark Horse Conan Omnibus suggestion. Just ordered a copy. Oh, awesome! I hope it will arrive to you in good condition, and I hope you will enjoy it.
We really need to get that Amazon link.
Yeah, we do. We
Hey,
do.
nickel.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, because that's like the thing that Dark Horse they've been having a fire sale on their entire Conan stock the last 6 months, and now they can't sell it anymore.
yeah, there's a lot of suggestion. Somebody said to suggest Momoa just do it in another reboot. We've had a lot of people remind us of other movies that didn't get finished or released. Let's see. I know there are some more questions here, though.
I can see Henry Cavill as Van Helsing, Christian Garcia says. You know what? Instead of Van Helsing, I don't want to see Van Helsing in a film ever again, unless it's tied to Dracula, as in he's a guest character in Dracula, and then he should be an old man in lecture, not the young action hero that he was in that movie with
Oh, I hated that movie.
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman, yeah.
Yeah. You know what that movie was? That was a Solomon Kane ripoff. That was a Solomon Kane movie without the rights to Solomon Kane. Solomon Kane is another character by Robert E. Howard, and he looks exactly like Hugh Jackman did in Van Helsing. That was Solomon Kane under another name. There is a Solomon Kane movie, which you also should check out if you haven't seen it. It's a brilliant source and sorcery movie. I would go and say it's the best movie you've never heard about. It stars me and names. It's been a long week. Sorry about that. We only call him Solomon Kane because he was so good in that role. That's all we know him as, and we never remember the actor's name, so we just call him Solomon Kane every time we see him. James Purefoy.
Oh, okay. James Purefoy. Okay.
Yeah, and he was brilliant in the role. He makes it clear just what kind of impersonator Hugh Jackman was in Van Helsing.
Well, I don't know if anybody would agree with me, but if they did the Dark Universe again and did it right, I would have Van Helsing be like your character who connects to more of the other characters and kind of is the through character. But I wouldn't have him be a young guy. I'd have him be more of the Dr. Loomis type, older version they've had in the past, like in the Hammer movies.
Yeah, that's what Van Helsing should be. He should be an older man.
Right. And then, like, if you want to do all these monster movies in the same universe, he just kind of, like I said, be the through character who's kind of like your Samuel Jackson.
Yeah.
Shows up in all of them. He may not be a big part of every one of them, but he connects them all somehow. And because he's always keeping tabs on Dracula or whatever, that he's dealing with all these other monsters on the side, maybe, or something. But yeah, I turned off the Hugh Jackman movie in like 20 minutes. I'm like, this is horrible. I couldn't watch it.
Yeah.
Adam Wolford asked us a question, though, if you didn't have anything else to say about that.
No, I only want to say that Thunder Dan, the action man, is entirely right. Yeah, like Peter Cushing, perfect Van Helsing.
Exactly, yep.
Or Michael Caine, like someone that's type right there. That's who should play Van Helsing.
But you didn't say his name right. It's Thunder Dan the Action Man. That's something we do when he's on the thing. Anyway,
I'm Norwegian.
I gotta give a shit. Adam Wolford asked about the Highlander reboot. According to MovieWeb, Highlander remake script is done, and they're targeting a 2019 release date. And this was last from March. That is the newest news I found on it. Looks Lionsgate still has the rights along with Summit Entertainment, it looks like. So chances are, I wouldn't be surprised we don't see it sooner than later. I know it's something they've talked about for a while, and it's probably ripe for a remake. Because really, let's face it, outside of the first movie and somewhat of the series, it's shit. So it kind of has a kick-ass soundtrack, and the first movie is a classic, but outside of that, it's an embarrassment. Let's face it.
It's the strength of the first movie that keeps that brand going.
Yeah, and Adam Wolford agrees. He would have liked if Van Helsing was the Nick Fury of the Dark Universe. Yeah.
Yeah, if you are to make a dark universe, as forced as that is, I agree that's the way to go. Absolutely.
Liam Neeson was suggested for Van Helsing. That's not a bad choice.
There are many actors who could do a very good Van Helsing, and Liam Neeson is obviously among them.
Yeah. Let's see here. I know there was more questions. Well, you got what? 15 minutes left? 10?
Yeah, 10. Yeah.
When Thunder Dan wants to know when Ragnarok comes, if we can rely on you to defeat your Mungander. How do you say that?
Jormungandr.
Oh, I guess.
It's a Midgard serpent. I shall do my very best.
There you go. He'll beat him with logic.
Yeah.
Where do I vote?
Kush asks, what about Manu Bennett, Crixus from Spartacus, presumably for Conan? I absolutely love Spartacus. I love that series. That was awesome. Manu Bennett for Conan, yeah, he wouldn't be bad. But again, he would be to me, he kind of like falls into the same category a little bit as both Jason Momoa and The Rock. And again, he wouldn't be bad, but he also wouldn't be entirely right for the role. Like, I could live with him. I'd be happy if we got him, but I would, for the first time ever, if I got to cast someone, I would cast someone that has like the characteristics of Conan from the original stories. We haven't had that before. Schwarzenegger wasn't right either. Like, Schwarzenegger is Germanic, and that's something that Conan isn't. I wouldn't be right for Conan because I'm also Germanic, which is something that Conan just isn't. He's proto-Celt, meaning that if we were to cast him now, I think that's what we should try to go with. For the first time, find someone who's more appropriate for the role. Again, I loved Momoa in the role, but he wasn't entirely right. Just as Schwarzenegger wasn't entirely right either.
Sorry about that. I thought I had myself muted.
That's all right. Tell Andre. Andre sees himself. Thank you. That the Midgard serpent is responsible for the current state of the Masters of the Universe brand. Well, the thing is, though, with the Masters of the Universe, is that the state of the brand actually isn't half bad right now, with one tiny exception. Because it's going really strong among collectors. Sony are no longer doing this crap movie that they were going to do. Mattel has the license back, so now we can only hope that Mattel is going to treat it right. They have every incentive to do so. So now it's just a matter of hoping that they find the right production partner to work with, which I hope that they're able to achieve. The only really bad news in the land of Masters of the Universe right now is that the DC Comics version of Masters of the Universe, which was pretty good, probably is done for. And we're also very unlikely to see the Masters of the Universe characters appear in the next Injustice game, which was very much so on the table. And I stress was. No longer is, but it was. And why isn't it anymore? Well, that's because DC are no longer working with Mattel for producing their toys. That's why they got the comic book license for Masters of the Universe, and why there was talk about their characters appearing in the Injustice game. You know, like this comic book Masters of the Universe versus Injustice that just concluded. That was kind of like testing the waters a little bit to see if they were to include them in the next game. That's all gone now, probably.
Yeah, hopefully it's a fair trade for what we end up getting instead of Sony fucking up He-Man, though.
Yeah. But still, all in all, not too bad.
And I agree with many of you in the chat. No Queen, no Highlander. You have to have the Queen music, period. But that's just because I'm a huge Queen fan. So, and yeah, I don't know if you could do it without a couple of the songs anyway. And I'm sure they would have no issues with them using them again. I don't have a problem with movies like reboots and remakes reusing music. That's something that's never bothered me. To me, that was like one of the highlights of Superman Returns. I don't know what you think about that, Andre, but
perfect. I have going to have a really, really unpopular opinion here. I think that the music for the 1978 Superman movie is really overrated.
Really?
Yeah, really. I vastly prefer the score to Man of Steel to it. That brings out emotion in me. That and the music in the Max Fleischer animation. I generally I don't have the same affection for those movies as loads of people do.
Oh, that breaks.
I know it's going to be
well, as far as that movie goes, but in general, though, question basically was though, how do you feel about reuse of music from older stuff, like using the Queen again if they did in the Highlander remake, or even some other movies when they dig up the classic scores? Sometimes.
I'm perfectly happy about it. I know one movie, for instance, where it worked perfectly. I'm not a huge fan of the Godzilla franchise, with one exception, and that's the most recent Japanese movie, not the animation, but Shin Gojira.
Yeah.
That reused the music from the original 1954 Godzilla to great effect. And that was literally the exact same music. They didn't re-record it. It was literally the music from 1954. And it worked pretty great. So yeah, I'm very happy with reusing older music as long as it fits the movie in question.
Right. And again, like to me, that's like that connection with Highlander is like without Princes of the Universe and Who Wants to Live Forever, at least those two songs almost, and you can't do that without them. I swear, it just to me. I don't know. And it seems like most of the people in the chat agree with me. So anyway, let's see. Was there any more questions we can get to before you got to go, Andre? Is there any good ones you saw?
Yeah, I see some good ones here. Adam Wofford. Have you guys heard of Elric of Melnibone or Melnibone? I have never known how it's to be pronounced. I only ever read it. French comic book character, and if so, it would be a good movie. Yes, I have very much so heard of Elric of Melnibone or Melnibone or whatever. I have to correct you a little bit though. Elric is not a French comic book character. He has appeared in a great French comic book series, but he is actually a product of the British author Michael Moorcock, who wrote the original Elric stories as short stories, much like Robert E. Howard wrote his Conan stories. So right now, the same people that have, or at least the same publisher, that I think it's the same publisher that made those excellent French Elric comics, they're also doing their own take on Conan comics. You might want to check those out. And yeah, Elric is cool, and I'd be very happy with seeing an Elric movie down the line. But I want to see Conan first. Fun fact, Elric actually interacted with Conan in the 1970s Marvel series. They licensed him so that Elric and Conan could meet up, which they did.
All right. I'm not familiar with it, so I'm glad you are. So there you go.
Yeah. I saw another question here. Let's see. Speak out if you see some cool ones, Tom.
Sorry, I was answering another question. Let's see here. I was trying to find ones that were more aimed towards you, of course. Let's see. Eric Kelly has to challenge you to a duel, I guess. Tomorrow at dawn with pistols. Is that your dawn or his dawn?
Yeah, which dawn?
Let's see here.
All right.
Anything new on Netflix?
Sure, should.
On the Netflix Witcher? Some of the new stuff the producers, writers have said made me feel it was going to be ham-fisted political preaching. I haven't heard too much about it. Have you, Andre, as far as Witcher goes?
No, I haven't. I haven't heard too much about that series, and honestly, I'm not that familiar with The Witcher as a property. I know it started out as a series of novels, I think, before it became games, but I'm not familiar with either. So there I have to speak from a point of complete ignorance. Thunder Dan the Action Man.
Yes.
Ellie, Andre only accepts duels with battle axes. Yes, now we're talking. Holmgang, that's what you can challenge me for.
And thank you,
That's
Sunbro,
the
for the
Viking
question
way.
before. And thank you, Sunbro, for the question before. Somebody asked you early in this chat. I can't remember who it was, but they asked if you were a fan of Vikings or not, the show.
Yes, I am. I'm a huge fan of Vikings. It's pretty awesome.
And there was a cluster here of questions I'm trying to find.
Yeah, because it's so cool because those the characters that appear in Vikings, they're historic characters. So it's cool to like see the people that I've read about and learned about in school on the big screen. Well, not on on my TV screen then, which is pretty big. So yes, I am a huge fan of the series Vikings.
There you go.
I only hate the fact that it's filmed in Ireland and not in Norway, like it was supposed to, until the Norwegian authorities chased them away by not giving the necessary tax rebates. Greedy bastards.
Yeah, that's sad. /1111 had another question for you, Andre. Is the movie The Thing big in Norway?
No.
Are you a fan?
No.
All right, there you go. Thanks for the question. Let's see here.
Well, to be clear, though, when I say I'm not a fan, that doesn't mean I dislike the movie. I don't. I think it's just fine, but I'm not a fan of it.
Well, there you go. I like The Thing too. It's not one. I'm one of those that I don't. It's not like the high on my list of Carpenter movies though, like most people. So I kind of understand that. I like it though. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's just yeah.
The second one, which was a prequel, that got a little bit of attention when it came out because it had like a bunch of Norwegians starring in it, like famous Norwegian actors, speaking Norwegian, singing Norwegian songs and everything. So that got some attention, but that was only when it opened, and then it was forgotten really quickly after that.
Yeah, I started watching that and I shut it off. I'll be honest. It was like, I've already seen this movie.
Yeah.
So, and being that I, just like the original, it was like, yeah, I'll pass. So let's see here. Let's find at least one more good one here.
The Demon's Reflection. Andre, I know you said you're not really into gaming, but have you seen anything about 2018's God of War? No.
Well,
there's loads of God of War games.
yeah.
So I've only seen like clips and bits and pieces of them here and there.
Here's a good question to end it on. Well, there's a couple good questions here, but here's a good one for you directly. Andre, who is your favorite cinematographer? Alpha J 3.0 asks.
Oh. Oof. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one and do some research, because I focus like more on the business aspects of movies and the story aspect and the direction and the cinematography. That's something that I really appreciate when it's good. And I know this is horrible for me, or horrible of me, but I never really pay attention to, oh, that guy's a great cinematographer and this is going to be good and this is going to be good. And yeah, I haven't done that. I probably need to do that. So I'm not capable of saying who is my favorite cinematographer. I'd have to think about it and then do a little bit research before I can answer that question. Sorry.
All right. Thought it would be a better question than it was, but I guess not.
Yeah.
Other than that, did you have any more time for any more, or should we wrap it up?
We can do one or two more, and then I really have to wrap it up.
Okay. Christian Garcia wants to know if we've seen Mowgli, the Andy Serkis version. No, I haven't. I don't know if you have, Andre. What did we think of it if you did? And he heard it was more faithful to the original source material, unlike the Disney version.
That's what I've heard too, but I haven't seen it, and there are many other things that I need to see before I can see that.
Yeah, that's the sad part about having not only another job besides Midnight's Edge is actually having the time to watch a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, that's just it. I'm so behind on everything. I have to see the Orville, for instance. That's higher on my list of priorities. I'll get to Mowgli one of these days, but honestly, it's not very high on my list of priorities. I saw a little bit of the footage and decided that, yeah, this seems okay, but I kind of like felt that I saw that movie already. Yeah, okay, so it's closer to the source material, but I'm not a big fan of the source material to begin with, so I'm not in a rush to see that movie.
All right, and I had another one here. Let's see. Adam Wolford wants to know what you think of the BattleTech movie.
BattleTech movie?
Or think of a BattleTech movie. So evidently, I don't know if there is one.
Yeah. Okay. What the hell is BattleTech?
I'm not familiar offhand. I'd have to look it up too. Yeah. Rob probably knows what it is. That's more his domain.
Probably.
To know what those are.
Board game of armored combat. Is that it?
Maybe.
Yeah. I'm not familiar with it, so I cannot answer that. Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm looking at some images and stuff here of a game. Yeah, looks cool enough, I guess. So if one is into that, then cool. But for me, no opinions on it.
Adam Wolford also suggests that we should have Razor Fist on, as he's a big fan of Eric of Melonbone. I'm not going to say it either.
Of Elric, just Elric.
Elric of Melonbone. I sound like an idiot when I try to say it anyway.
That sounds like a Swedish city.
Yeah, he's somebody who has come up in the past, and I'm sure if he wants to be on, we'd probably gladly have him on to talk. I think we know people who know people, so that's a possibility. Let's see here. There was another quick one here. Where to go? Oh, your thoughts on the Hellraiser franchise. Reed by Nature wants to know. I'm not sure if he's aware of some of the videos we did on the main channel. Maybe you could tell him a little bit about those and how much the Hellraiser franchise means to you.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Hellraiser franchise. Of all of those like iconic horror franchises, Hellraiser is my absolute favorite one. My thoughts on the franchise as a whole, apart from a couple of the movies, waste of potential. The potential is far greater than the movies have been, and I'm actually a bigger fan of the Hellraiser comics than I am of the movies. And I know it's never going to happen, but I would love for a Hellraiser TV series, Netflix series, to be made in the vein of the comics. That would be pretty sweet.
It seems like a franchise that'd be more well suited for a series. Yeah, I think we talked about that. And
absolutely.
I was referring to, of course, we had done a series of videos of an interview with Gary Tunnicliffe, where we covered pretty much the entire series. And we also host the official audio commentary for Hellraiser Judgment on the main channel as well. So there's your answer, Read by Nature. That was a good question, because
that was Andre a really good question.
Definitely a fan, and I'm not sure if you're aware of those, so you must definitely check them out. There's hours of stuff to go through.
I would say that if you're a fan of Hellraiser, there are 2 YouTube channels that you need to check out. One is Mr. H, who's also a huge Hellraiser fan. So it's Mr. H Reviews.
I was going to say, Mr. H Reviews.
Yep. And loads of Hellraiser content. And then there is Midnight's Edge. We haven't got that many Hellraiser videos, but the ones that we have are really, really information dense. Definitely check those out if you haven't.
A good 5-6 hours worth of your time there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So check them out for sure. They were a labor of love, and we had a lot of fun talking to Gary. So check those out. Kristen Garcia has a great one to go out on. Any upcoming videos on the Punisher? Punisher Warzone turned 10 last month, and the 89 version is turning 30 this year. And Andre, everybody knows you kind of like the Punisher a little bit.
I kind of do. Yes, the answer is yes. Punisher 1989 retrospective is coming. I would like to have it out in time for season 2 of the Netflix Punisher before it's cancelled. But I don't know if that's feasible. We're going to have to see, but it's definitely coming relatively soon. And I would like to do retrospectives on all of the Punisher movies. But the first one, the one that I've actually started on, is the 89 one. So that should be coming, if not in time for season 2, then definitely not many weeks after.
All right. So there you go. And of course, we want to thank Andre for his time. We know you don't get a lot of it. So when we do get you, it's great to have you on. And I'm sure everybody out there appreciates you answering their questions. Sorry we didn't get to everybody's question. There was some of them I'm sure I missed somewhere. And I know there's a couple at the end there you guys did try to get in, but Andre's a busy man. So he does have to go. Unfortunately, it's very, very, very late where he's at as well. So Andre, any last words from you before we go?
Yeah, no, just thanks everyone for checking in. I hope that this was of interest, even if it was very, very Conan-centric, which I know is not for everyone. But again, in this day and age, given the political climate at Marvel, this Conan series is the antidote, and you should try to support it. So yeah, that's all I have to say. Anyone, thanks for your attention, and thanks for having me.
All right, so we hope to hear from you again here soon, and I'm sure we've got plenty of stuff planned on the main channel as well. Of course, always go and check out the main channel if you don't already haven't subscribed to that, and check out our Patreon. Rob just recently had me upload his recent stand-up comedy act for you guys to check out. And that's available for anybody who's one of our Patreons. So even if you only donate $1, you get to see that. So check that out. He's real proud of that. Other than that, yeah, thanks everybody for your time on this midday live broadcast here on Midnight's Edge After Dark.